In our world, wealth is no longer trapped inside the borders of insatiable, greedy states, both federal and national. Now, wealth can be made digital, virtual. Wealth has wings. I predicted this reality long before many of the internet booms of Silicon Valley, long before work became remote, and well before billionaires boarded private jets and left California for Texas, Florida, Nevada, and elsewhere. I predicted this long before Mark Zuckerberg, Sergey Brin, Larry Ellison, Elon Musk, Larry Page, Peter Thiel, and so many others flew the coop. This was before Chevron, Tesla, SpaceX, Oracle, Charles Schwab, Ruiz Foods, and a tidal wave of other corporations choose to relocate their major operations. I predicted all of this over 25 years ago in the new Barbarian Manifesto. And then 10 years ago, I published Flight of the Golden Geese with my good friend and inspirational collaborator, David Lesperance, the international tax and immigration advisor. We explained how new technology is changing the nature of power, how the modern world is creating a new class of people and corporations, the Golden Geese. These highly mobile, highly skilled, high net worth individuals, together with the companies they control, no longer show loyalty to their political surroundings, be they local, regional, or even national jurisdictions. Their assets are digital, and their companies are networks that give little thought to borders. It seems the politicians have forgotten Thomas Jefferson's warning. Merchants have no country. The mere spot where they stand on does not constitute so strong an attachment as that from which they draw their gain. In the age of the internet, everyone is a merchant. The rich can leave a state just as easily as they enter it. The umbilical cords have been cut. The globalized individual, the company, no longer feels the need to support the aspirations of the regions of its birth. David and I described a haunting metaphor, the golden geese, those wealth creators whom governments depend upon, but who can now fly away when states tax too heavily, regulate too aggressively at the behest of trade unions and various ideological lobbies, and treat success as something to be punished, then these geese will take flight, not as a rebellion, but in rational self-preservation and as part of their fiduciary duty to maximize profits for their shareholders and to protect their families' wealth and well-being. Today, nowhere is that prophecy more clearly demonstrated than in California. However, not everyone agrees with us. Christobal Young, a sociologist at Cornell University and the author of The Myth of Millionaire Tax Flight, says research does not show millionaires fleeing. But he is talking about mere millionaires, who we dismiss as the upper middle class, those whose businesses and customer bases are often tied to a fixed location. However, even he acknowledges that his prior research is not applicable to the California proposal that is targeting around 200 billionaires. In a recent interview, Young stated, none of that research has considered a tax nearly as large as what is being proposed in California. We are not talking about paying a little more in income taxes. There's a lot more at stake and a whole lot of unknowns. He knows that his prior research does not apply to the hyper-rich golden geese, whose life inertia is minimal In short, they do not need to be in a specific location to make or maintain their wealth or lifestyle. Our observations relate to the hyper-rich, who pay tens of, if not hundreds of millions of dollars into California's coffers. They are reacting to announcements such as that of Californian legislators in late 2025 that they intended to pass a law that would facilitate a one-off seizure of 5% of multimillionaire assets as of January the 1st, 2026. Now that's assets, not income, and one-off until the next one-off. There is a warning from history. On the 3rd of December 1798, Pitt the Younger introduced a temporary income tax in Britain to pay for the Napoleonic Wars. That tax was repealed in 1816, 1 year after the Battle of Waterloo. But this was too good to last. In 1842, Sir Robert Peel brought back the tax as another temporary measure, and it's been temporary ever since. The high net worth individuals we refer to are all too well aware of how permanent temporary can be. They are surrounded by teams of top advisors who establish non-resident strategies and who can facilitate a move out of a federal state in less than a month, although it may take somewhat longer to move out of the country. Such informed advice is essential, since the state will pounce on the slightest mistake in the paperwork to drag escapees back into their jurisdiction. But the super rich are escaping national shackles. Every quarter since 1994, the US government has thoughtfully listed both those US citizens who, because of federal tax reasons, have renounced their citizenship, and the long-term residents who have ended their US resident status along with them. The original political thinking by Congress was that such a list would name and shame those included, and this would frighten off others thinking of leaving. Talk about being deluded. In 1998, that figure was 398. In 2025, it was 4,889. With his left-leaning ideology masquerading as theory, economist Gabriel Zucman is telling everyone who would listen that a wealth tax is inevitable in the USA, UK and Europe. He is in denial that high net worth individuals in those jurisdictions are already making long-term plans to jump ship before these national governments introduce legislation to make it more difficult, more expensive to surrender their passports. Today they are leaving California. Tomorrow they won't be caught out and will abandon any jurisdiction, including the USA itself, if it merely talks about introducing a wealth tax. So Texas and Florida and all the states benefiting from the Californian hemorrhage must lobby Washington to stop any talk of wealth taxes, or they too will suffer the same fate as the Sunshine State. For decades, politicians believed they were in control of a permanent, stable equilibrium. In California, they saw Silicon Valley as an engine of global innovation, where entrepreneurs created trillion-dollar companies and where venture capital would continue to pour in. The state's fiscal policy was increasingly dependent upon taxing this success. The top 1% of earners was providing around 40% of California's state tax revenue through income tax, capital gains taxes, and other various charges. And that policy worked until it didn't. Governments always assume that wealth is rooted, that once wealth is created, it will stay. Somehow, emotional ties will override economic reality. But the new barbarians see it differently. To them, rootlessness is power. The more intangible the wealth, the less it is controlled by geography. Governments fail to understand the new reality. They squeeze harder, they extract more, and then they are surprised when the golden geese fly away. In The Flight of the Golden Geese, David and I described how prosperity does not collapse because of catastrophe, rather by thoughtless policies. Governments raise tax levels, introduce more regulations steeped in left-wing and green ideologies, leading to greater complexity and extra cost. Drip, drip, drip. At first it seems manageable, but eventually they reach a tipping point and the dam bursts. The creators of wealth leave. This is what is happening now in California. Sacramento was progressively tightening the screw until the state economy hit its tipping point. Corporate headquarters are leaving. High net worth individuals are changing residency. Business entities shift registration. Elsewhere, other states offer something better. More stability, less hostility towards success, lower taxes, less regulation. Jurisdictions like Texas, Florida, and Nevada recognize the brutal truth of modern economics. Capital can no longer be held captive. When companies move, workers lose their jobs. To make things worse, ill-conceived regulations end with increasing job losses among the working classes. Then not only do states lose the taxes of the super wealthy and of the talented who follow them, but also the tax take from the now unemployed workers will also drop. Madness. In 2025, Sacramento implemented an hourly minimum wage rate of $20. Instead of getting a pay rise, tens of thousands of low-paid workers lost their jobs because small firms like fast food outlets couldn't afford to pay the new rate without raising prices, which drove customers away, and so businesses went bust. This is where I call upon Friedrich Nietzsche's insights on power dynamics. Long before the existence of digitalization, he warned that societies often resent the most productive in their midst and turn against them. A state is called the coldest of all cold monsters. Coldly it lies, and this lie creepeth from its mouth. I, the state, am the people. Leaders of the state insist that people are property of the state. They claim the moral authority to steal from the creators of wealth and call it budgeting. A budget means living within your means, not demanding more and more from those you control to cover wasteful spending. In this way, states do not cultivate excellence, rather they punish it. Naturally, calls to tax the rich get the support of the mob. It is in basic human nature to resent elites who stand out, to tax them, to control them, to level them, and sometimes idiotically to threaten to expel them. Eventually, the new barbarians no longer submit to those mediocrities who seek to be masterful by degrading the strong. The rich will go to where they can thrive and where talent is appreciated, not penalized. New barbarians are Nietzsche's free spirits who prosper in today's economies. They are mobile, independent, free from tradition, willing to destroy outdated structures, such as wealth being controlled by governments. They do not attack governments directly, rather they slowly bleed them dry by simply walking away. The new Barbarian Manifesto warned that the elite leaving would cause an entropic feedback loop. First, wealth flees. Then, tax revenue shrinks. Governments compensate, they call it budget, by raising taxes further, which drives out more wealth and talent, accelerating decline. Instead of adapting to economic reality, its institutions double down on control. Instead of competing, they coerce. Innovation hasn't totally left California as yet, but the state risks all by turning success into a political target. This is not a moral debate. This is not about whether billionaires are nice people who pay their fair share of taxes. This is about incentives. Capital flows where resistance is lowest. Talent then follows, migrating to where opportunity is greatest. Companies incorporate where friction is smallest. Ideological virtue signaling will not survive economic gravity. In the digital age, governments transform from rulers into competitors, from controllers into service providers, from extractors into attractors. Those who fail will see their tax base evaporate. Now, historically, when states have overreached, people couldn't easily leave. Land was fixed, factories were fixed, workers were fixed. But nowadays, everything is fluid. A software company can be run from anywhere. A billionaire's wealth exists largely in digital form. A corporate structure can be refiled in days. What has changed is not human behavior, but mobility and transaction costs. New barbarians have options, and options create power. California still has a lot going for it. Talent, universities, climate, culture, innovation networks. It should be the easiest place in the world to retain wealth. But when political friction rises too high, even paradise becomes an option. States will not collapse overnight. They will slowly hollow out, losing their most wealthy, production and talented citizens, until budgets strain, services decline, and political tensions rise. By the time leaders notice they have reached a tipping point, the golden geese have already gone. Now, like Nietzsche, I believe humanity is entering an era where traditional structures of authority are breaking down. He famously wrote, "God is dead, and we have killed him." Now, he was not referring just to the rise of secularism. He was saying that the old sources of unquestioned power no longer command loyalty. Today, the old god of territorial control is dying. States, national and federal, no longer automatically command economic allegiance. Now, my law of patriotism states the depth of patriotism for the citizens of every country is inversely proportional to their wealth. With this law, I have translated Nietzsche's philosophical insight into economic reality. The new barbarians are not immoral, they are post-territorial. They belong to a world where choice has replaced obedience. Treat wealth as a captive, and it will flee. Nietzsche warned, attack the strong, and society weakens itself. David and I are delivering a very simple message. Prosperity cannot be coerced. It must be cultivated. States that punish success will lose it, whereas states that compete for success will thrive. Indeed, such coercion could lead to the collapse of democracy itself, as predicted back in the late 18th century by Alexander Tytler, Lord Wodehousely. A democracy cannot exist as a permanent form of government. It can only exist until a majority of voters discover they can vote themselves largesse out of the public treasury, which is California today. But California isn't doomed, but it is at a crossroads, a tipping point. It can continue insisting that its golden geese cannot and will not fly, or it can accept the new reality. In a mobile world, prosperity is voluntary. And now we are living that new reality. The new barbarians are not far away, they are already at the gates. And it is they who are quietly choosing where the future will be built, where they will build the future. The only question left for California and for every modern government, national and federal, is this. Will you make yourself a place where prosperity chooses to stay, or will you keep tightening your grip until there is nothing left to hold? Thank you.